Hello, welcome to the Edmunds CarCast podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrea, here with Alistair Weaver. We have a guest on the show. We have Carl Widmann. Carl's from Ford. Welcome, Carl. Thank you so much for joining us. Quickly tell us what it is that you do there. What is your title now?
I'm Ford Racing Production Vehicle Chief Engineer. So what's that mean? That means anything that's street legal. I'm in charge of making sure the engineering gets done on it and it delivers on time to what the enthusiasts have. So like Raptors, when we did GT500, that type of vehicles, GTD, just working through all that with a bunch of enthusiasts who really make vehicles for enthusiasts.
Carl, I think you've got one of those jobs that everybody loves, and we should sort of just start with Ford Racing. So this is the company formerly known as SVT. Then it became Ford Performance, and it's Ford Racing. But Ford Racing now encompasses all of the stuff that happens on track, but it's also
Correct.
Ford's performance vehicle. I just want to get that sort of straight at the
Yep.
start because it's hard to keep up sometimes.
Absolutely. So we now umbrella the whole organization under Mark Rushbrook, and that covers what would have been referred to as competition racing across all the spectrum, and then the production vehicle space, and really the enthusiast things we do with the marketing side of engagement and the experiences that they get with going to the Raptor Assault School for driving, or the schools the Dark Horses go for in North Carolina to really get a chance to learn how to drive the vehicles too. So it's kind of that whole circle of engagement to vehicle to engagement after the sale.
So
Fantastic.
prior to the Ford Racing side of things, you were on the Mustang team. So maybe we'll start there. I'm sure we have some Mustang questions we could go over as well. But what was your role on the Mustang team?
So in the Mustang team as chief engineer for Mustang. So we finished off the launch of the 2015 for global, right? So we led the global launch when I was there. And then that was super exciting because you really understand your vehicle when you put it against the prism or the first time you go to Europe in a long time, and really understand it better after you've met every country's media person who has their own Mustang story, even though you hadn't sold a Mustang in that region. So, coming out of that, it was very clear that the brand bullseye was the Bullet, and that general Steve McQueen experience, even every time we went and launched, because we launched in China, and as we went around the globe, I spent a lot of time in Australia for the launch. It was the same general theme. So it was also kind of fun as we came back around to the 50th anniversary to launch the Bullet. We did a good buzz vehicle, the the high performance Q3 EcoBoost. Still at least see those around with the track pack system on them that people rally. The Mach 1 behind you is a big passion project. When we came back from Australia, the Australians wanted an automatic track car, and that was a big onus for the Mach 1 that is both a manual and automatic, to be both track capable for what they were looking for. So it was kind of fun in that enthusiasts as a global group to really come up with what we would call special vehicles that were going to hit on different groups that would come to it with their experience. And then it's always great going to car shows and talking to people and understanding how they get the enjoyment out of them, and just their road trips and what they talk about. And I think the guy I saw, Carlisle, had spent his Mach 1 was going to tracks. His whole back window had decals in orange to manage the stripe of all the different tracks he'd been through, and there's like a little hole left he could look out the back, and it was just that feeling or the honor, the privilege to put a vehicle out there and then someone embrace it and then really have all those experiences with it and go out there and use it.
And how do you feel in Europe when it was like when you arrived and it's $10 a gallon or something? I remember when they launched like the V8 Mustang in Europe, I was like, has anybody worked out that this thing is going to cost you like $100 to go to the supermarket just in gas? Everybody lives in like Texas or Detroit. It's like a whole different world.
So I talked to a guy from It was either Norway or Sweden or something, and I asked him that question. He says he rides his bike once a day.
Yeah,
So in
that's not a
essence,
bad one.
right?
See, I was
It was
thinking
that.
thinking about the performance variance of Mustang over the last, you know, decade or even longer. We've had Bullet, the Mach 1, Bullet, Mach 1, Boss 302, several variants of GT500 when that license and that name was available. How have you seen those progress over the years? Now, as consumers, obviously, we're pushing it a little more. Even something like Boss 302, it's like, oh, we've got the side cutouts now for to change the sound of it, and we're just doing different things to it. Uh, but pushing the limit each time. But what I found is it went from like a slight upgrade, like we got a little bit more power, or we've got some aesthetic differences to it, to really leaning into the performance side of things. Like now it's got to handle better, it's really got to grip better, and it's just like where it's gone from, let's say 93, from the Cobra back then to now has been amazing, right? From 5-speed T5 in the 93 Mustang to DCT transmissions because the engines are so, they're so powerful and the cars are so quick. Quite an evolution.
Yeah, if you look at it, it, so some of them are easier than others, but all of them have a character that had to come through in them. I think the 500, when we did that one, that was super difficult to execute the dream, right? A drag strip capable vehicle, but something that can put all that power down on a racetrack. And, at Virginia International Speedway, it can run head to head with a Ford GT. Totally different experience, and you use a lot more track with a GT500 to make that happen. But the challenge was with that to get that full power of the supercharger down to the ground consistently. And the DCT really was a from scratch creation and calibration to get that power through the system and down, and then the torsion drift bias and just that constant redesign to get the cooling system to run with that capability and the brake system. If you've ever seen it, I think one of the funniest thing is the brake rotor against the original GT500 wheel. They're the same size, right? I mean, it's just amazing the stopping power that vehicle had to put down to match that capability to really have all that power around the track. And I've met enough people who that's what they do with the vehicle. And I always get a kick out of the people who have modified it to be, the dream drag strip vehicle that they wanted, right? And so the modifications people do to those to have their Mustang fantasy is always amazing to me, and I enjoy Carlisle to spend time just talking with people what they've done with the vehicle.
Carl, we at Edmunds, Matt knows this well because we talk about it a lot. We actually bought a GT500. We have a policy of buying up cars and we then live with them. And typically the plan is that we live with them for a year and 20,000 miles. And we bought the GT500, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, or pretty much the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was lots of YouTube channels doing all this drag racing, and we tried it a little bit. And the GT500 was always losing, partly because it just, the rear wheel drive, ultimately, you're always traction limited. So we realized that this wasn't really showing off the vehicle in its best light. So we came up with this Edmunds U-Drags concept where you had a straight, a brake, a corner, and then an acceleration back to the finish line. And this was really inspired by the GT500, because what we liked about that vehicle was it wasn't, to Matt's point, a sort of traditional muscle car. This was something that could actually stop and turn, and we wanted a mechanism to actually show off its capability. So we started doing all these engines. We built a whole series off the back of it. Now a 10 series, and it's been seen millions and millions of times. And this was actually the inspiration, and we kept this car for 4 years. Every time we decided we really ought to sell it, then we came up with a new excuse to hang on to it. And the funny thing is, I don't think we lost any money in the end. We ran it for 4 years. We did 30,000 miles. So, I mean, in terms of my justification to the broader business was, well, I think we actually made money after 4 years and 30,000 miles. So it was a great car. And then we sold that, and now we have a Mustang Dark Horse, which we've just supercharged. Which we're trying to get back to that GT500, but you haven't quite done it yet.
Yeah, they're a tremendous amount of fun. I'll see them. You guys are familiar with the Hell Circuit out in Pigsty, and we'll go out and drive. We're forced to drive the GTD to make sure it's all ready for production and that type of stuff. And then you'll see 500 still running, second owners and stuff that they'll run out there in the morning before it gets crowded. But it's always a great vehicle on any type of course to really enjoy. Just tremendous power all the time.
Yeah, it was great. It's just the fuel range. That was it. Do you ever, when you were developing that car, did you ever try and fit a larger fuel tank? Because it did feel like you were filling up every hour.
Yes, our track bills for fuel are kind of astounding credit card bills we get with that thing. But no, the fuel tank's kind of trapped in there between the axle and the back of the front floor.
Yeah, actually, we've got that out. If you're watching on YouTube, the picture that Matt's just showing is it's kind of cool to burn through a tank of gas in only 30 minutes. So there you go, shared experience.
There you go, and not feel bad about it any bit, because if you're burning through that much fuel that quickly, you're having the best time ever in the GT500.
Yep.
We've had it's amazing opportunities to drive the car and participate in the launch experience as well in Vegas when this car came out on the road course and the drag strip, and then and just driving it up in the mountains and doing the whole thing with the car. And like Alistair said, they love that car so much they held on to it for way longer than what's typical for the Edmunds fleet, and for good reason. But on that car,
actually, sorry, Mike, go ahead. No, I was just wondering. I know you don't like talking about future products and everything else, but we've seen plenty of pictures of new GT500s running around, and we report it on Edmunds and everything else. Is there anything at all you can tell us about that car, or is that all still top secret?
No, I'm checking into those photos though, trying to figure out what it might be.
right. So you're just as curious as we are. I know for sure. I mean, we should see another performance variant, another sort of, something under GTD and slots in between Dark Horse and GTD. Maybe it's not a GT500. Maybe it's something else. Because I was going through all the different naming conventions. We did Bullet, we did Boss 302, we did Mach 1, and then we got to go. Do we go back to Bullet? Do we go to, is there something else in there now that we can bring in? And then, of course, Dark Horse being new as well. Something came up on Dark Horse. I had a quick question. Then I want to move over to some Raptor stuff as well. But the vehicle that Edmunds has that they supercharge is a Dark Horse with an automatic. It's great, especially in LA, easy to drive.
Yep.
But no launch control on the automatic versions of the car. But on the manual, of course, and the DCT, the GT500, yes. What's the reasoning behind that? No launch control on the automatic. On one hand, it seems like it would be easy, but the other hand, it's like, I don't know if it's like a durability thing. It's a heat buildup.
I don't know. That wasn't. I was gone by that time from the chief engineer role on Mustang, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
It is just before. I know we're going to talk about Ford Raptor, but I'm fascinated by the GT5. I got two questions, and then we can talk Raptors all day. But so that car, the two things that really stand out about that car, obviously you've got a lot of power to start with, and then if you buy the supercharged pack, you've got even more power. Even on a car like the Mustang, which is supposed to be a muscle car, are we now moving away from just more and more power? I mean, we test so many EVs at Edmunds, and of course, they're incredibly fast in a straight line. We've got GT500s, 760 horsepower. Is there a world in which you say, I mean, we're not going to see, I mean, GTD's got 800. You're not going to see a GT500 or equivalent with 1,000 horsepower. So how do you square that circle? Because things have the horsepower war has just got crazy in recent years. Have you got a different way into the argument?
Yeah, I think I think you're always trying to balance the experience or the emotion of the event, right? It Raptors, for us, you get that experience from something that's 400 horsepower or 720. In the Mustang space, I think when you talk about a supercharged vehicle, you're already playing a game of grip. There's more power on a GT500 than you can get down in all conditions in the two tires you have. So as you look at what we did on the GTD, you'll see it's got, in essence, it's a wide body kit to get a bigger tire, bigger Cup 2 down, to really transfer that 4 horsepower. And again, with a transaxle in the system, more weight on the tire in the rear, and then a wing that is stupid amount of downforce, right? And that's really what you're playing is grip on the track, is speed around. So I think there's a limitation in the rear drive and a big tire to really get around the track much faster with much more horsepower, because you're just going to break free on the rear tractive capability. And so I think that's always that balancing act. And then people still, they love a 350 more than a 500, right? Because you can it's just perfectly balanced, right? You don't need huge amounts of downforce with that vehicle, with that amount of power, and you rev it up and it's just miles all the time. Yes, it's slower around the track than a 500 or a GTD, but that emotion state or that experience that they're looking for is what they love, right? And so I think in the horsepower game that we've proven there's this balance that the one with most horsepower might not match what that customer is really looking for. So, but if you're going to go for full speed like the GTD, you need more power to get around the track, but you definitely got to put more weight on the rear axle, bigger tires, bigger wing, right? And then you can get around the track faster, much faster than a 500.
Is a problem? I mean, we just tested the Corvette ZR1. There you've got 1,064 horsepower, and I drove that down at Circuit Americas. We've also driven it elsewhere, and that's such a lot of car. It's an enormous amount of power, and you guys are getting it there as well with the GTD and L. From a consumer perspective, you put these cars, and it's the same with the Raptor, isn't it? I mean, Raptor is such a massive, heavy vehicle with this enormous amount of power. Is there a point where you look at your consumers and say we're giving them too much car? Because there was certainly with ZR1, there was a certain nervousness around that car that it's, you can have all the electronics to reel it back in, but it's a hell of a lot of car.
Yeah, I think we haven't come across that in the internal combustion space yet. I think there's a diminishing size of, how much power you can get out per cylinder, per displacement. So we haven't come to that point, I think, where we've come to an outpowering in the rear grip or in the four-wheel drive system, the 4 tires. And I think from the customer's perspective, my favorite one when I ask that question of how much power is enough, it's when you black out when you're doing a 0 to 60.
Yeah, I think we're getting closer to that point with some of these cars. I mean, some of these things are pretty amazing. So let's take a quick break, and then I want to talk about Raptor as well. So we'll be right back. Okay, so Raptor, 15 years now. We're about 15 years into we're into an anniversary with Raptor, and the Raptor brand has expanded. Of course, we've got the F-150, the F-150R, the Bronco, and the Ranger. We've driven them all. They're fantastic. When this program started with the original Raptor, did you have any idea it was going to blow up the way it did, or you think it was just going to be just kind of the specialty niche vehicles like we did with Ford? Like you had good success with Bullet, and then we maybe go to Mach 1, and then maybe we do a different variation of Bullet. You sort of set some expectations, but it's a lifestyle now. Raptor is a lifestyle.
Yeah, Raptor is a lifestyle. And so a question, I went back and, I've had the good fortune when I came to Ford Performance maybe 7 years ago That's some of the original team that did the initial launch, initial designs of that product of an F-150 Raptor, right? And so a couple of things. You got to remember it was 2008 when they sold the program. So they had to convince finance that they could break even in 2008 on the sales pitch, right? And so you have people like Herman Sollenbach was the guy then, and had to make that promise with the CFO that don't worry, we're going to spend this money, but it's a good deal. So you always have that with the finance team when you're selling a new idea. But from the marketing perspective, you boil it down to this: what resounds to an F-150 that's built Ford Top? And so that decision or discussion ended up, of course, it's an off-road trophy truck, right? And so that pivot into it was that simple. And then, okay, how do you do it? Well, there was no cookbook, right? It's a lot simpler now for us. Yeah, if you think about it that way, the recipe has modified over it, but it is really trying to get factory built truck, which goes down the same assembly line as an F-150. So one will pop off at the same time next to Unlimited, right? That ability to make it that way, and then make it with components that are unique, that really are always back to the spirit of, hey, this is the best off-road truck we know how to make. And our partners play a big role in that. Our engineers, we've got engineers who have laid out the Gen 3 and worked on the Gen 3, who worked on the Gen 1 Raptor. And so that understanding of where we need to improve. We've got off-road racers that compete off-road who are working our dynamics teams, who are always tuning. We have Fox with us, and we keep pushing them. They keep pushing us. Over 15 years working together, it's quite the adventure. They have a dedicated staff, and so we know more about them than their wives do, right? So, relationship is really what's come out of it, but it's just that spirit of the original truck. But I think we've got a lot more technology than we did when we laid it out, and we have a lot more latitude on the number of parts we change. From the initial layout, though, it's that spirit. And if you look at it, it did make a lifestyle. I mean, we sell the numbers in hundreds of thousands. Think about the experiences and adventures people have. You're talking millions, right? And it is amazing when you spend time with people that you have clubs that go to Baja, 2-3 times a year. We've got people with clubs that are going out to Baja. Every race team, even Honda, uses F-150 Raptors as their chase trucks in Baja. So yeah, it's become a lifestyle, but it also really revolves around that core Baja experience. Every truck we make, every generation, runs Baja stock, right? And then we're starting to run every year. All 3 trucks are running Baja. So we get that knowledge, feed it back through the system, and then that really drives where the next gen goes. Right?
Speaking of experiences, you were just at the Raptor rally, right? And those of
Yep.
us on social media, we follow so many Ford people, and the guy that's never seems to be in an office is Mike Levine. He's always in the dirt somewhere,
Yep.
and I think he just lives in a tent. Maybe that's the way to do it, is just live life super affordably by just popping a tent everywhere you go. But Raptor Rally, what can you tell us about it? It looked like an amazing event.
It was an amazing event. So this is the second year in a row we've done that. This one was a bigger gathering, a lot more involvement with the clubs that really defined how to achieve that. So for the clubs, it's a great way to get together with a lot of people together, talk about the trucks. They talk about what they do in the different clubs, and then for us, we get a chance to see their trucks, see how they're modifying them, talk about the trucks, So for the engineering teams, and it gives us a chance, just like any big Mustang event, is to really have a chance to really sit there and talk. What do you love about it? How do you use it? How have you modified it? How have you made it your own? And then what do you do with it, or how do you get your smiles on your face every time you drive it? And so for us, we get that out of it, and then it's that community of what they enjoy about it, be it overlanding, be it running in Baja, be it one guy, SoCal Raptors, we'll do off road and end up at a winery. So, but it was just fun. All great groups of people, and just it is a lifestyle. They would say also, and in how they come to the day. When they get up in the morning and where they go, right?
Is it I mean, obviously we were talking about Mustang earlier. Is it a very different scene? Do you get crossovers from people who are tracking Mustangs and also have Raptors, or is it like a totally different lifestyle and you're just buying into one or the other?
No, here's my favorite, right? If you go on the Mustang 6G site, you can search to how to specify the trailer you need, detailed specs, to put your GTF 500 in and still tow it at the 9,000 pounds of a Raptor R. So you can have your Raptor R tow your GT 500.
Yeah.
So there is that amount of detail of crossover you see in that of an enthusiast, obviously a Ford enthusiast. And then, do they all have Mustangs? No, but they may have another great crossover product for us is the Explorer ST. You'll have an Explorer ST with a Mustang fan, or you'll have an Explorer ST with a Raptor as another vehicle. So we'll get that, but I think they're all out there. What I think the common thread is, they're not sitting at a computer, I don't think. They're all out enjoying life, be it at the track, be it driving someplace on an adventure with a Mustang, or going off road, overlanding, but they're all out enjoying something. Is I think the common thread as an enthusiast who is after an experience that is rewarding to drive. And you look at the common thread of how we set the vehicles up, in that it is, we reward the expert and flatter the novice. So it makes it, and that's very true how we tune a Mustang and how we tune a Raptor, globally too.
At the Raptor rally, you guys were talking about going to Baja, showing off the truck, and some of the performance parts that are available, the new Raptor F-150 3.5 liter calibration that's available, which, by the way,
Yep.
I love that the performance parts catalog is still getting getting equipped with so many wonderful parts that include warranties. One of the reasons why Alistair and Edmunds use the Ford Performance Supercharger kit on their Dark Horse is amazing. You can get that kind of power with a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty or whatever was on it. So tell us about getting into what's in store for Baja this year. Are all the Raptor products, you said all the Raptor products are racing, right?
Yes, they are. So, and that's getting pretty close. I think they are basically finished their test runs and getting fitted up to go. So last I talked to Brian, who leads that effort for the team.
Because the vehicle, sorry, Carl, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Good. No, go ahead.
No, I was actually going to move the conversation on a little bit, because I also, we're obviously looking at the F-150 here, but the vehicle I really like is the Ranger, just because it feels so much more agile and nimble.
Yep.
Is there more and it's almost like a bit of a sleeper vehicle in your range, isn't it? Everybody thinks of the Raptor, they think of the F-150, but are we going to see more from the Ranger? Because I like that truck.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'm very bullish on the Ranger Raptor. I think this second generation has a great setup in it, with the 3-liter. I think us sharing the 3-liter between both the Bronco Raptor and the Ranger Raptor, you get over 400 horsepower in both applications. Both of them are set up with live valves, which gives a tremendous amount of control and jounce on the vehicles, so you can put the power down. And then, one's an Ultra 4 racer. If you ever take a Bronco Raptor out to Johnson Valley, it's just a hoot. And I think what I've always found that everybody comes to the Ranger Raptor, it's a great dirt track racer. It's got a lot of rebound control in it, and the way it's been tuned by the enthusiasts in Australia who set her up, it is a lot of steering precision, a lot of dirt track racing. And my experience, I kind of understand why they did that. They run a dirt track race and they haven't cut down the trees. So at each corner is this gigantic eucalyptus tree. And so it really focuses you, if that's your tuning course, that you really care how the steering feedback is. And it's how that truck's set up. And, I was just talking to people in Texas, and they'll run those dirt track races with those trucks at one of the schools to show people what it's capable of for training and stuff like that. And the way they describe this course is almost the same kind of dirt setup as how that truck's tuned. So yeah, it's a hoot to get out there with it. And I think what's also interesting about it, it's very popular in metropolitan areas. So we get a lot of people in New Jersey, New York, who may pick that instead of a Bronco Raptor or a F-150 Raptor, just because of the mid-size pickup. A lot of functionality to still take stuff and go places with it, but a lot less onerous to be in a tight urban setting.
Yeah.
The Raptor lineup, other than just saying, hey, what do you want? Sort of the small, medium, and large, right? Do you want the Bronco? Do you want the large F-150? There's more going on, in the engineering side of it for how that vehicle is going to be used, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Is the Bronco more of the rock climber? The Ranger's more of the high speed
Yep.
off-roader, right? They do have sort of
Yeah,
different uses as well,
absolutely.
other than just
We
what
call them
fits in your parking spot.
Yep. No, we call them superpowers. So in essence, so like the Ranger superpower is it's a dirt track runner, right? It is the sporty. It runs a lot more rebound control in the shock than the other two. You can throw it around, and it's set up with a lot of power like the Bronco Raptor, but it's in smaller OD tire, so it's lower to the ground. So that's what that is. It's kind of the sporty one. You take a Bronco Raptor, it can lift the full weight of the truck on one tire up a rock. So its requirements are set up to do that. So the front axle is beefed up, the half shafts are beefed up, frames beefed up in the front. Even though it's got, a same shock setup as an F-150 front shock, it is that capability to pull itself up over stuff is really what is the amazing part of it. And then with a 45-degree approach angle, it's I've never driven it in Borrego and ever care about what's in front of me. It is the freedom of driving and not super concerned about what you can get over. And even when you drive it in Baja, it's got that same general feel that the front end approach angle is never going to crash into something, right? It's just so high, and you get comments from a lot of people who that's what they love about the truck. It's got that charging capability because of that approach angle and just general locking front axle, all that stuff. And it kind of leans back into the real off-road heritage at Baja of the 1960s Broncos. So a lot of people love that about that truck. So it is an Ultra 4 vehicle. We tuned it in Johnson Valley, climbing up the same stuff the Hammers team did. So it's very unique in that, but it still can run high speed in the desert on a durability course. Now the F-150, obviously it's the big daddy, it's the godfather, right? It is the one that establishes everything. It's the one we lead technology on, and it has to really carry the F-150 as a halo, but the Raptor brand as a halo. So it is a halo on a halo, right? That's the Raptor R, right? So those vehicles are set up with the latest technology we can do, and when we do them, we make sure that each one is the best ever, right? So even when we did the moderate freshening in 24, right? We came with new steering gears, new knuckle, new half shafts, right? We sped up the steering ratio and we put, dual valve to control, down some rebound, and then you get that truck out there, and it runs Borrego at speeds that is something I don't think we could have ever imagined back when we launched the Gen 1. The ability to use damping control to give you, in essence, dynamic clearance in the front of that truck, right? So you can run over whoops and not feel that in your steering or in your seat. So you can still have steering precision on the vehicle, so you can keep pushing it. And that's back, from an expert, they can use that to dial the speed, dial the cut on the vehicle. And then from a novice, they'll just feel more comfortable because they're not going to get jostled or knocked out and feel that they've lost control of the vehicle or lost control of the steering. So it is the one that leads. How about that from that perspective?
It's kind of interesting to talk about different personalities. And if I can ask like a technology question, obviously we've had the turbo engines, so we've got we've gone back, or everybody's going back to V8s at the moment, and it's extraordinary times. But where do you see? We're seeing a lot of other people, particularly the Europeans, now introducing hybrid. And hybrid makes a lot of sense in the dirt because you have that low down torque, and either as a ultimate performance gain, I think about things like the 911 GTS, or to give you that kind of instantaneous pull, which is obviously fantastic off road. And is this something that you're looking at for the future, or do you want to kind of keep the sort of pure experience?
Yeah. There's a couple things to that. So I think what we're always looking for, we call it hot torque. And so a lot of what we look at is how much torque we can get when it's, 120 degrees out and the sand's 150 degrees and you're climbing a hill as fast as you can, right? So that in the deep sand, right? And so in those kind of load conditions, we've set up our turbochargers to be capable of that, right? And so when you start looking at a hybridization, you have an electric battery and you have an electric motor, and then your goal there is to guarantee that it can still deliver that power for a long period of time. And so I think the challenge is, can you do that and still carry all that weight? So it's the weight versus torque trade-off over a long run in the desert, right? So full tank of gas type of run. So can you still provide that extra capability? Does the weight give you function equivalent to that trade-off you're going to have by carrying around? And so that's always that thing about a Raptor. Really, everything's got to carry its own weight for what it does, because any piece of weight you put on it's going to slow it down. So I think that's the challenge in hybridization that has to be figured out.
That's super interesting. I think about, like we talked last week about the BMW M5, and that suddenly is a £5,500, sports sedan or sports tourer. But and what about? Sorry, Matt, were you going to say something? I don't know.
Well, I was going to say the having a hybrid version of it's really not really about gas mileage. It's about using it off road. And Alice and I were talking about this back in August. I drove to Monterey and drove like a Land Cruiser hybrid, and I was like, "Listen, isn't the Land Cruiser for like going away for the weekend and kind of getting off the grid?" Well, the hybrid version had such a small fuel tank that it had like a 280-mile range before you had to refuel. So kind of defeated the purpose for me of the Land Cruiser. So in the sake of Raptor, any of them, having some sort of hybrid technology, really not about just the fuel mileage. It's about having that extra power. It doesn't make sense to have that power when you need it, but you're right. You can't go to, an 8-gallon fuel tank because you've got a battery on there. I mean, you won't even get out of LA with that little fuel, right? So
Yep.
I could see that being the difficult engineering part of it, going, how do we make this thing a vehicle that you can go off the grid with, right? Go away for the
Yep.
weekend or hit the dirt and then be able to come back and and
Yep.
still have that power available. But
Yep.
yeah. Um, Alistair, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna say, like, to finish this technology conversation. If we'd been having this chat 2 years ago, we'd have been saying, where's the EV, where's the F-150, Lightning Raptor, and and it feels like, obviously we've had Mustang Mach-E Rally and everything else. Now that wasn't correct. That wasn't a Ford Performance or a Ford Racing as it is now car, was it? That was actually a separate thing. But I guess the follow up is, where are you with EVs, and will you do Ford Racing EVs?
Yeah, I think the EV we have is the Transit EV, right? That demonstrator. So I think we're learning from that.
Yeah.
Is what I'd say at that point. So it ran Pikes Peak, and I think that was an interesting demonstration for a set of technology in that application. And I think it's another case where in the race application is trying to learn from that and see where we can go with it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
saw it at Goodwood. Goodwood, it's enormous.
there's
Like I
this
think that I was so the good at first place. I was like, it's like you think of it as being sort of transit size. It's not. It's like it's not.
it's
It's
big. So
enormous.
there's the Ford Supervan, which the Supervan name, right, has been around for a long time. But then when it switched to EV and started doing the Goodwood Hill Climb, putting down impressive numbers. And I think, did you run the Supervan at Pikes Peak, or was it the Lightning, the racing version, the Hill Climb Lightning? Because we saw it at the LA Auto Show last year, and walking around the truck, like you said, Alistair, it's like you look at the truck, it's massive, and then you go to the back, there's no pickup anything in the pickup truck. It's just a massive like rear diffuser and electric motors back there. But yeah, the question is how much of that technology, because you're making these cool demos, these racing demo vehicles, does that translate into any of the performance street products that you're making?
Yeah, I think that's the thing we got to figure out, right? So a lot about the demonstrators is to gain knowledge of what is that boundary out there, or what is the limitation in technology, and then take that back and figure out, in essence, how you can cascade from race back to a road car. So
Talking,
that's
that's a nice segue into, obviously Ford is back in Formula One next year with Red Bull. Quite a useful driver that you have. Is that a, how we understand it's a technology partnership and everything else, but will you see like technology from there? Will that kind of infuse the road cars? Can you draw a direct link, or how sort of hands on are you as the road car guys with some of the kind of extreme technology that F1's getting into?
I think from those applications, I think it can be small stuff like how you do 3D printing of metallic components, right? So it's another example of methods and tools, right? And so you have to push the envelope of 3D printing technology to go from CAD to race, right? In the absolute sense, right? So that's what you're going to have to do to beat that competition and really move forward, right? And so it pushes the envelope in that technology as an example, and then from that it can be how we do a rapid change on XYZ component on our development to shrink the time from concept to customer application. So in a simple way, that knowledge you create as an engineering team and how you can solve issues on the race time clock assists in either the product development stage, or it assists in ideas that could go into production. Because we spend time making, in essence, the virtual car we make, just like the race team does that, the same thing. And then we test the virtual cars and simulators. We use the same simulators to do Raptor as they do simulators for, training, driver training, right, type thing. So those tools and methodologies of how you can go in the initial analytical phase is a way to share that capability. And in F1, you're obviously pushing the limits of everything, right?
So it's more about actually about process than about the end product in a way.
Yeah.
You can always get the process pieces because um, that's the easy one. And then as you go along, obviously the F1 chemistry is the F1 chemistry, or that type of stuff. It's going to be different, right?
One last question on my end before we wrap up is we sat down not too long ago with Jim Farley and he was talking about we were at the racetrack, we were at Monterey, so racing was the topic. He was talking about getting into to Baja and racing there and all the variants of Mustang being racing and how he saw Mustang going after Porsche, the different variations of 911. And I said, okay, but 911 has a 911 Dakar, an off-road version of their 911. I was like, when do we see the Mustang version of that? Will we see that? And he didn't say no. So what's your thought on that? An off-road version of Mustang?
I think you know the web has a lot of pictures of it. If you look at it and scroll through it, so it's something that obviously the community is interested in, and then it's just a question of can you make something that delivers on that, and how big is that 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 segment, right? So I think it's been out there for different ways to Raptorize. I think you look at I forgot who said it was. It was basically a Mustang Raptor or something, right? And so I think it's out there. Is it the first place we go? I think Jim's going to know better than me at that point in time. So your conversation with Jim's probably better on that topic than me, right? So a lot of stuff we do is a little bit near term, right, type thing.
Yeah. I mean, the thought seemed kind of silly, but also not because of this evolution of the Raptor lineup, the products, the amount of engineering, the suspension development, everything that you guys put into that. This isn't a complete departure by going, hey, we're, you know, Rolls Royce, and now we got to do a monster truck. Like that would be insane, right?
I've driven the Lamborghini Huracan off-roader, so
Yeah.
everything's possible.
Yes, that's right.
Uh,
We'll have to see.
yeah. Okay. Just thought maybe there was something there. Who knows? Um, we're running out of time here, but I appreciate all of it. We got to have you back on again soon. I know there's like you said, a lot going in the works. Congratulations on this anniversary with Raptor, and good luck at Baja. I think it's going to be exciting, and you guys are gonna tear it up out there.
Sounds
Alistair,
good.
any final thoughts from you as well?
No, just thank you for your time. I mean, Matt and I both have the privilege of, we've both been in this game a long time, and we come on media launches and everything else. We get to speak to people like yourself very regularly. It's great to be able to share those conversations a bit more broadly, because I always enjoy having dinner and a glass of wine and sort of just talking cars with people. It's nice to be able to kind of share that in a more sort of public environment. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.